Hi there, this is TBC. Welcome to the channel. Just wanted to make a quick video about Elemental Shaman PvP. Elemental Shaman PvP is not something talked about very frequently, as it is, according to the numbers, the worst PvP spec regarded by most of the high-level PvPers, and there's a lot of reasons for this, and we can go into that. But the biggest three things that I want to go in today, as promised in the title, is the rotation of the spec, the comps that the spec works well with. We're going to go over phase 1 only today, and then we'll make a video for phase 2 because it's going to be quite a big topic. And then phase 3, playing the class and a couple tips and tricks. Just to go over my spec really quickly, we went 5 into convection, 5 into concussion, of course elemental focus, 3 into reverberation, 5 call of thunder, 3 into eye of the storm. You'll notice that I skipped over improved fire totems, and we'll talk about that in a second. Followed up by storm's reach, because this is really important to get that range. This comes into play so frequently. Elemental Fury, literally a no-brainer. You'll never get Unrelenting Storm. In PvP, it really doesn't matter that you're going to get 10% of intellect. That's like 50 mana per second-ish. It really doesn't matter. You're going to want at least 2% hit from your Elemental tree here. And then you need your Lightning Mastery. Obviously 6% reduced damage. This is huge for PvP. Elemental Mastery followed by Lightning Overload. This is essentially Wind Fury for Elemental. Sadly, we'll not be going anything into the enhancement tree. This is actually what makes the spec actually quite difficult, is we're missing out on improved Ghost Wolf, and of course Toughness, which is your huge CC negator. Over here to Restoration, we're going to go 5 into Tidal Focus, 5 into Totemic Focus. You can optionally put a couple into Ancestral Healing. That is a spec I have also run and had a good time with. It makes it, if you get a critical heal, whoever your target is gets a pretty good chunk of extra armor. You want the 3% hit from Nature's Guidance, Totemic Mastery, 1 Healing Grace, 5 Tidal Mastery, and Nature's Swiftness. Now you're going to say, hey, but Troran, you're missing some hit. Well, we have 3 from here, and we also have 2 more from here. The rest of your hit is going to be coming from your gear. So if I swap this over to Spell, you'll see that my hit rating brings me up an additional 2, and that's plenty for PvP. So the first thing we want to go over is your rotation for PvP. Alright, so for part 1 of this elemental tutorial, we're going to go ahead and demonstrate a burst rotation onto this target Dumbo right here. Now the biggest part of this rotation is what you use your elemental mastery on and what you use your nature's swiftness on. The biggest thing in PvP, and especially with the elemental shaman, is you essentially have on-demand 5k damage. What that usually equates out to is an elemental mastery paired with nature's swiftness, chain lightning into an earth shock. If that all crits, which you have a pretty good chance of doing, actually a 20% chance of doing, you will do 5k damage, and if you go ahead and proc the elemental version of Wind Fury, that will equate up to about 7 to 8k damage. That's insane for one global. However, we're going to go ahead and maximize the amount of damage and try to get up to 10k. The way we're going to do that, of course, is we're going to drop that Wrath of Air totem. You're going to signal to your team that you're bursting, which you do not want to pop Bloodlust first, okay? Your signal is going to be Fire Nova. So we're going to go Fire Nova into Bloodlust. Your Torrents, you're going to War Stomp once they charge you, into a normal cast Chain Lightning, Nature's Swiftness, boom, into an Earth Shock. That is your full burst. As you can see, that is over 60%. He already second winded up. That was about 50% of their health with no Elemental Wind Furies, right? And you did have plenty of follow-up damage there because your cast time on your spells is at a second when you're bloodlusted. Look at the cast time of Chain Lightning here. Easy 1500 damage right off the bat, followed by another Earth Shock. The biggest thing with Elemental DPS is that your burst rotation goes around a 3-minute cooldown. So essentially, if you don't win during this combo, you are going to have to do some kiting, which is actually not too hard, especially if you're running the comps that we're going to talk about. Let's go ahead and finish this off and talk about comps. For part 2 of this video, we're going to be going over comps. Now, the biggest thing to understand when we're talking about the Elemental Shaman comps that work well is that Elemental Shamans are essentially one big glass cannon. Now, they do have the ability to heal, which we're going to be very much using in a lot of these 3v3 comps, but the most important thing is that you have an on-demand 8k burst in one global cooldown, and it can go even higher depending on your luck with the good old Wind Fury. Now again, we're calling this Wind Fury, but I'll go ahead and start referring it to Lightning Overload, but it's essentially Wind Fury for Elemental. Now the greatest thing with Elemental is that we're going to be going over Phase 1, and Phase 1 is when Elemental Shamans really shine. In Phase 1, your burst potential is really high, and the health of your enemies is going to be very low because Phase 1 arena gear is nowhere near the usability and the feasibility of Phase 3. And phase 3 is also when rogues, warriors, and all your melee classes get their armor penetration, and they don't get that in phase 1 or 2, so we're going to completely take advantage of that and turn into tanks. So let's go over your spec. Now this spec is up to debate, but this spec is going to be played with a lot of your CC comps because your job is to kill. You're not going to take a lot of your survivability, and you're not going to take not really any additional things in enhancement because your job is just to get the kill. We're going to go 10 here. This is the classic elemental build for PvP, 1, 3, 5, 3, 2, 1, 1, 5, 1, 3, and of course 5 in Wind Fury, Lightning Overload. Over into Resto Tree, we're going to go 5, 5, 3, 1, 1, 5, and 1 for a total of the classic 40, 21. With that spec, we will then move into your comps. So for 2v2, you're going to want to first look into the comp of Elemental Shaman, Shadow Priest. The reason why is that silence that Shadow Priests have on demand is just as on demand as your burst is. So let's say you're facing a warrior and a druid combo, which is a very common duo for basically the entirety of the game. Your kill target will end up being the druid. You will get them into a silence. That'll be followed up by the Shadow Priest's on-demand DPS, and you will do 7k damage as your Elemental Shaman because you're a beast. Most importantly, Bloodlust will affect your teammate and the cast time, so that Mind Blast will take about a second to go off, which just so happens to be very similar to your Chain Lightning cast while Bloodlusted. The second comp will be Elemental and Beast Mastery Hunter. If you Bloodlust a Beast Mastery Hunter during their biggest Beast Mastery Hunter cooldowns, they can essentially solo anything. Your job is to drop the necessary totems to make it even stronger, and of course, back them up with your good old 5k instance. The third comp is your Elemental and Warrior combo. Now, this one's up to debate, but one that I have had a lot of success with. You're essentially playing the role of a healer and a Resto Shaman, but what people don't know is that you're in fact Elemental. Now, of course, they're going to have an add-on, but they might even think it's bugging. I've had people whisper me after the game saying, hey, is this a bug? And I'm like, no, I'm actually playing Elemental. And what they don't understand is that that burst, that 7k that they're going to take right off the bat, can match up right with the big Mortal Strike. And of course, if you're playing with a warrior that actually wants to play with you, a sword spec warrior. Now, of course, playing mace spec is the meta, but if you're playing sword with a Wind Fury, you're essentially getting the goodness of the enhancement warrior combo, but you're playing as a warrior, and you're getting them the Wind Fury they need, and you're going to back up any Wind Fury proc with an on-demand 5k damage. I'm not sure if you've seen a trend here, but whenever someone else does 5k, you're going to back it up with 5k, and that's a dead person. It's almost impossible to beat, if you can match it up. The last, and probably the best, according to a lot of the private servers I've played on, is going to be your Elemental and Retribution Paladin. Now, a lot of these specs could be played as Resto with Warrior or Resto with Ret. The reason why you can also play them as Elemental is, especially in Phase 1, your heals are not going to change too much. You have Nature Swiftness. The only and most important talent you're missing out on is Earth Shield. Now, that is important. I'm not going to discount the ability of Earth Shield, but you're hopefully going to make up that fantastic, that terrible lost with the fantastic ability of Elemental Mastery and an on-demand 5k burst. We're going to go ahead and go into 3v3 comps now. 3v3, you're going to see a lot of the similarities here, but your healer is a really important choice here. The first comp is going to be Elemental, Beast Mastery, and Disciplined Priest. Your kill condition is going to be a trap, followed by a fear onto the kill target, and that should net you your 2-second kill global. The second comp is going to be Elemental, Frost Mage, and Disciplined Priest. The Frost Mage gives you the CC that you're lacking, and your kill target will of course be whatever can take 10k almost instantly. The Frost Mage has a Frost Nova from the Frost Elemental, followed by 2 Ice Lances, Bloodlusted into, of course, your 5k on demand. The Disciplined Priest, of course, will be busy fearing and keeping you both alive, as that comp is fairly squishy. The Disciplined Priest can also back up your burst with a fantastic penance. The third, and probably my favorite, because nobody knows how to play against this, is Elemental, Boomkin, and Holy Paladin. So this spec is very movable. As you can see, the Holy Paladin can give you a Blessing of Freedom as a Shaman, which is your biggest weakness as an Elemental Shaman, is just getting slowed for 90 years. And that will allow you to move freely. The Boomkin is of course a druid and can't really be CC'd because it's the Burning Crusade and druids are essentially gods. And then of course the Holy Pally, your kill condition is actually very unique in this one. It's going to be a Entangling Roots And then as the Shaman, you are going to be getting the wonderful blessing of protection, and any melee classes on you will not be able to kick your biggest burst potential, which is a lightning bolt into a chain lightning earth shock wombo combo. The target of that usually dies, and of course, you and the Boomkin, your buffs buff each other, and it's a fantastic and very fun spec to play. And of course, you are getting to laugh at your opponents because you're playing with a Boomkin and you're an Elemental Shaman. You're supposed to be bad, but you're in fact quite good. Now that's the 2v2 and the 3v3 comps that I have played and had good success with. Good success meaning that I have played them to above a 1750 to 1850 rating. The most difficult thing is once you get above 1850 is you're going to be facing a lot of comps that are counter comps to you, which are anything essentially with a rogue or anything essentially with a rogue. I said that twice because rogues are very difficult for enhancement shamans, or sorry, elemental shamans. You're essentially going to be spamming poison, cleansing totem, and frost shock until they hopefully die. We're going to go into my favorite way to PvP in TBC, which is the 5v5 meta. 5v5s are essentially baby battlegrounds, but they're stuck in the tiny arena. And this is very good for elemental shamans because you get to use your most mana efficient spell, which is Lightning Bolt, and you get to use it all the time. Because you will be the target, but if they target you, you have 4 other people that will probably play with you as a burst. Now I could go over the comps here, but there are just so many that work with Elemental Shaman that I'd rather go over the most important partner for you. As an Elemental Shaman, you're going to want a Pally on that 5v5 team, because your kill condition is still very similar to your 3v3 teams. It's going to be a Blessing of Protection into your burst, and that will essentially kill your kill target. 5v5s are very bursty and very slam dunk-esque. If you get the right setup, you will take the win. Anyways, that's it for your comps. I hope that was helpful. Let's go into the final step, which is tips and tricks, and we're going to use this warrior as a dummy. Alright, so part 3 of this video is the tips and tricks section. I wanted to take this separately because as Elemental Shaman, there are some things that most people wouldn't really understand if you didn't play it for quite a while. First and foremost, you always want to have your weapon enhanced with Frostbrand Weapon. The reason why is because if you are walking next to someone and just kiting them, you'll get actually a pretty big proc, 344, which is 100 additional. And it happens pretty frequently, and you'll see that it's a 25% movement speed, which will allow you to kite. Now they're going to have to spam movement effects on you, which will of course take away from the warrior's rage pool. That's what we like. Now, that is the first tip. The second tip is that when you're gearing, I would recommend going for the resilience set because you are going to be very squishy, and having 458 resilience essentially makes you into a baby druid. And then also for gearing, I would recommend getting the Battlemaster's Trinket because an on-demand 1750 health is hilarious, especially when you're about to die. People usually don't see that coming and you're able to get off a couple of heals as well. Now, I could go into a very long topic of fake casting, but I'd rather let other YouTubers do that. There's another YouTuber for Shaman, I believe he has Caitlyn in his name, TP Caitlyn, something like that. I'll link him below. He does an absolutely spectacular job of talking about fake casting. It's where I learned a lot of my stuff recently, and his videos are very helpful, especially when it comes to the resto spec. Now, other than fake casting and popping your cooldowns and being a Shaman, the most important part of your role as a Shaman is this bar right here. Now these are, if you'd like to take a screenshot or refer back to this video, these are the totems that you'll end up using the most. Now these are with the comps you're playing with, of course. So this Wrath of Air totem is to be used with spellcasters, of course, and Wind Fury from melee respectively. A totem that gets slept on is Windwall Totem. You'll see that the totem protects party members within 30 yards, reducing ranged damage taken. If you're facing a Hunter comp, drop Windwall and drop Poison Cleansing, and that Hunter is going to feel the difference because they can't take your mana, and their damage is quite honestly terrible. It's essentially a Stone Skin, but for range. Now, if they're hunters that have a brain, their pet should stop your totems instantly, but that means that super buffed pet is not on you, and you are doing your job as a Shaman. So make sure to understand that your totems essentially counter particular players. Now I do have Stone Skin on my bars down here and I'm clicking them so we can get the tooltip. If you drop the Stone Skin, you'll notice that you're also going to be taking reduced melee damage by 43. Every single hit that a rogue makes on you with daggers is already going to be very reduced thanks to the fact that you are wearing a big juicy shield and you have armor, so you have 53% reduced damage plus an additional 45 from Stone Skin. If you drop this totem plus your Poison Cleansing, rogue's damage on you is actually quite poor. They have to get you into a stun, which of course they will do their best to do in order to get their full damage output. And of course, if you have a hunter on your team, drop Grace of Air. So totems I could talk about for years, but the most important thing to do is that certain totems counter certain classes. I want to go over each one. Fire Nova Totem is a part of your burst, and you will use that to signal to your team that you're bursting. You will then back away and follow it up with a Lightning Bolt, and then Wombo combo with Chain Lightning Earthshock. Magma Totem is great. You'll see that right here I have this as rank 1. It's because it's super inexpensive for mana, and you can sit here in Ghost Wolf during a rogue's beginning of the game. This will essentially signal to the world that you are the target, because they're going to try to get a sap onto somebody else and target you, and that is good because you are a Hulk. So drop your Magma Totem, and if you do get lucky, that rogue will get pulled out by that pulse, which is always hilarious. Now going back over to Searing Totem, this one is great for pillar camping. So if I'm going to go ahead and use this rock over here as an example, and you'll notice that I'll drop my Searing Totem on this warrior as we go by. So this warrior is obviously going to want to chase me, and I can go ahead and just camp this rock right here. And as he moves around this rock, I can use this rock just as a totem, or sorry, as the pillar in Nagrand Arena, for example. And that Searing Totem will keep people out of stealth, it'll keep them in combat. It's a fantastic way to just make a lot of players very, very angry. Now I have Disease Cleansing Totem on here just because I don't really have very many other water totems that are healthy or helpful, because you're almost always going to have one of these two down. Your Mana Spring Totem, if it's not down, you need to have it down. This is one of your always have down totems. Or if you're facing a rogue or a hunter, you'll always have Poison Cleansing down. Now a really important thing to notice, if you go over your Cure Poison tooltip, it's 207 mana to cure 1 poison. Or you can drop a Poison Cleansing Totem for less than that and cure 1 poison from your entire party. So essentially, I only have this on my bars for this 1 point alone, remove it from your bars. It is a complete waste of a spell and a big waste of a global. It is just completely useless. Poison Cleansing Totem is just better. Against hunters and any other form of range, you're going to be dropping Windwall Totem, which is literally just hunters. And this will, it's basically Stone Skin for ranged attacks. It's a fantastic way to save your healer some mana. This is another one of your always put down totems. This is Wrath of Air Totem. This is going to be 101 extra healing and spell damage. This is going to also be a big win for your burst, as it's going to increase your burst by around 100 to 600 after it's all said and done. Wind Fury Totem, I don't need to talk about it. Put it down if you have melee on your team, especially if you're playing with a warrior. The number one reason people hate playing against Shamans is Tremor Totem, especially Warlocks. Warlocks are one of the few classes that Shamans can actually take down. We can purge their most effective shields, which is extremely fun. And if we can't, it's probably a private server bug, because I did test this on my own TBC private server, and I could purge the Warlock's shield. This is something we're going to have to test. But purging a Warlock shield feels fantastic because they kill their pet to do it, and then you purge it, and it's just absolutely hilarious. And then if they try to fear you have your Tremor Totem down. Now, most Warlocks are going to have a macro that drops Tremor Totem, or has their pet kill Tremor Totem almost instantly. So what you're going to do as a very, very smart Shaman is you are going to drop your Tremor Totem in extremely inconvenient places, because Tremor Totem does not require LOS. So we're going to put it in between rocks, we're going to put it under logs, anywhere you can. You are going to drop your Tremor Totem and then stay within 30 yards. I would also create a weak aura that says, I am out of range of Tremor Totem. That is a fantastic weak aura to have, and one that I use in Arena. Tremor Totem is going to be one of your most important reasons why people bring you. Now, Grounding Totem and Earthshock, we're going to go into this a little bit. So, playing against a Shaman as a mage or as any other spellcaster is extremely painful. The reason why is because Earthshock with Reverberation is a 5.4 second cooldown. So let's take this warrior for example. We're going to interrupt that spell. He's locked for 1, 2 seconds. He's now going to start a second spell. He's going to cast Grounding Totem. That's now grounded. We're going to interrupt that second one he's going to cast after the Grounding Totem. If we target a spellcaster, they should get 1 spell off every 8 seconds, because this is a 15 second cooldown. This is a 5.4 seconds cooldown. So we're going to interrupt. They're going to start casting after 2 seconds. We're going to drop Grounding. There we go again. They're going to start another cast. We're going to interrupt it. And then now we're back down to Grounding. So they're going to get that spell off right there, which is most likely going to be a Polymorph, and you're stuck. If it's not Polymorph, you win the game because you locked him down again. Welcome back to friggin' Earthshock Kingdom, and they have to move and cast. So 80% of the time, if a Shaman is good, they should be able to lock down casters, or ideally healers. This brings me to my 5th or 6th or whatever amount of tips this is. Probably my most important tip. Your kill target is almost always going to be the healer. The reason why is because you're going to interrupt a Polymorph on a mage, and then you're going to go over to a healer, drop your Grounding Totem, and go ahead and use your 5,000 damage Ultra Burst Wombo combo. So with those tips, I hope that helps. The Elemental Shaman is definitely viable, and I want you guys to give it a shot. I want you guys to please comment on this video if I could do anything better. This is after several years of playing this class. I initially played Enhancement, but I found that Enhancement for me was just a little bit dry as a spec. You're essentially just praying for Wind Fury. There's very little on-demand damage. Elemental does have that awesome advantage of being able to pop that Nature Swiftness after a Lightning Bolt and just see a massive amount of damage, especially if you get your Elemental Wind Fury, which of course we did not. So the biggest thing with Elemental that I want to go over again is if you can master your Totems, your Interrupts, and your 5k burst, you essentially are a viable player. That is it for section 3. Now I wanted to do a little bonus section for those of you that are still here at the end of the video. One of the greatest things about being an Elemental Shaman is your usability and your race choice. Now we've talked about being a Tauren as being super important. Troll also has a point that you can use your Blood Rage and get below a 1-second cast for Chain Lightning, which is truly fantastic. But most importantly, as the Elemental Shaman, is you have to understand your role as a healer. As you can see, a lesser healing wave with all of your haste is only 1.45 seconds, and heals for around 1.6k. So if you're in a really big pinch, you can drop a War Stomp into a heal and then a Frost Shock, which will of course slow your opponent. This tip alone has saved me and will most likely be all over your bars and all over your tooltips because it does a fair amount of damage and of course heals your team. Double healer comps are extremely strong, but there's a chance that Blizzard might do something about that. There are several YouTubers that are kind of campaigning for double healers to get some sort of nerf. As Elemental, we're kind of disguised as a double healer. We have lots of resto talents, as well as a fantastic amount of plus healing just from our gear. So something you can do is, let's say you have a Frost Mage on your team who has a great amount of burst on his own. You can really just focus on healing and just watch how on demand this damage. Let's say I'm spamming Lesser Healing Wave, taking about 4% mana per heal, and all of a sudden I want my damage out. We're going to go ahead and drop this into a Chain Lightning with Nature Swiftness, and there is an easy 6k damage right there. The ability for an Elemental Shaman to heal and then jump into damage is extremely powerful and should not be negated. Anyways, I hope that helps, and I hope that encourages you to give Elemental Shaman a try in TBC. Alright everybody, thank you so much for the fantastic view of the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. And of course, just like every other YouTuber on the world, if you found this valuable and if you found information on this channel that you found to be actually helpful for your gameplay and deciding if you want to play this fantastic spec, please consider subscribing, as I'll be pushing out 1 to 3 videos every single week, depending on my, of course, raid schedule, arena schedule, and Classic WoW schedule. Other content that you can expect is me doing exactly what I just taught you, except in the actual arena, on this arena server. I hope to really give you a pretty good idea of how Elemental can perform and its weaknesses as long as you watch these videos. If you do want any more content about Elemental, please go ahead and ask in the comments. I really would love to fill up my content schedule with stuff that you actually want. And please consider liking the video, as it does boost the algorithm. I'm a marketer at heart, that's my career, but I'm a World of Warcraft gamer at home. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next video.